This contest of men with padded gloves, it is no superficial thing. It is as deep as our consciousness and is woven into the fibers of our being. This is the ape and the tiger in us, granted. But it is in us. Jack London.
I've knocked out every fighter that I've faced.
I've been looking for somebody to knock me out for years.
December 1st, 2018, Deontay Wilder versus Tyson Fury. The heavyweight champion, Deontay Wilder, was defending his title against lineal champion Tyson Fury. After 3 years out the ring, gaining 400 pounds, and battling with depression and drug addiction, Fury was making a comeback. It seemed as if Fury was going to overcome the odds until suddenly, in the 12th round, he gets knocked down. It seemed as if it was all over. Then, as if straight out of a scene from Rocky, at the count of 9, Fury gets up. He miraculously survives the onslaught from the champion and comes back to win the rest of the round. This is the fight that made me a boxing fan. The bout ended with a questionable draw, but what Tyson Fury had just done was much bigger than the outcome of a fight. At the time, I hadn't consciously noticed that this was a white versus black matchup. I was completely unaware of the history behind such fights. And as a person that had never experienced racism, I didn't put any emphasis on the racial aspect of this fight. But the rematch took place during Black History Month, and Wilder put this narrative at the forefront.
People. You know we've been fighting 400 and still fighting to this day.
Passionate about this topic, his catchphrase, to this day, refers to the struggle and discrimination still faced by Black people. On the other hand, Tyson Fury was taking the opposite approach, saying that race had nothing to do with this fight, and that this wasn't a racial war. Fury dominated the second fight. Wilder was dropped twice until his corner threw in the towel. At the time, I felt as if Wilder had unnecessarily racialized this fight. But then, a few months later, the George Floyd incident happened.
From Washington's newly named Black Lives Matter.
This experience prompted me to educate myself on the topic. I started off by reading Nelson Mandela's Long Walk to Freedom, and then the autobiography of Malcolm X. My research inevitably led me to Jack Johnson, the first black heavyweight champion of the world. December 25th, 1908, Tommy Burns versus Jack Johnson. For decades, the Color Line had prevented black contenders from getting a shot at the heavyweight championship of the world, which was regarded as the most prestigious prize in sport, a prize many believed a black man should not hold. Jack Johnson only got his shot to fight for the title when a promoter put up $30,000 for the champion. The promoter knew that a white versus black matchup would be very lucrative.
December 26, 1908, and world's heavyweight champion Tommy Burns defends his title in Sydney, Australia against Jack Johnson. Johnson has been after this heavyweight title fight for over 2 years. He hurled challenge after challenge at Burns to no avail. A good right uppercut, another ripping right uppercut by Johnson. Uppercuts, hooks, all punishing blows. Here in round 14, Johnson rushes in, lands an uppercut, 3 left hooks.
Jack Johnson battered the white champion so bad that the police stopped the recording and stormed the ring, preventing a final knockout.
Johnson becomes heavyweight champion of the world, December 26th, 1908.
The fight film spread around the world, inspiring black people and alarming whites. Jack Johnson was born of former slaves and lived in a society that oppressed black people. Regardless, he lived his life as a free man, never conforming to expectations. Because of this, Johnson was seen as a symbol of black strength, breaking stereotypes and challenging black inferiority. Johnson had open relationships with white women. Because of this, he was lambasted by the white press, earning him the label of the most hated man in America. The white public demanded that the heavyweight champion be a white man. And from the moment that Johnson won the belt, a search for a white hope to take it off him began. Novelist Jack London famously called upon retired heavyweight champion James J. Jeffries, pleading with him that the white man must be rescued.
Jeffries must emerge from his alfalfa farm and remove that smile from Johnson's face.
While champion, Jim Jeffries had refused to face Johnson. Ironically, he was now being pressured out of retirement and into what was built as the battle of the century.
How would you like it if he claims the belt's his because you won't fight him? How would you like it if the whole damn country says he let a loudmouth be champion of the world?
Jeffrey was given the label of the Great White Hope, the man to dethrone Johnson and restore athletic supremacy to the white race. With the world watching, the contest took on greater significance than just a boxing match. It was seen as a struggle between the races whose outcome would challenge the validity of white supremacy. Jeffries himself stated, "I'm going into this contest with the sole purpose of proving that a white man is better." July 4th, 1910, Jack Johnson versus James J. Jeffries.
Gets underway. The fight is scheduled for 45 3-minute rounds. Extensive motion picture coverage has been planned as the entire world waits for the results. Johnson lands a stinging overhand right, which is the best punch of the fight thus far, and round 4 comes to an end. A smashing right hand by Johnson is followed by a jolting right uppercut. Here in round 15, he rushes Jeff against the ropes and lands a hard right uppercut. He follows it up with 3 left hooks, and Jeffries goes down for the first time in his entire professional career. The crowd leaps to its feet in the shock of what's happened. Jeff rises and gets hit with a smashing left hook, which sends him out of the ring. Jeff keeps second with the help of a fan, lifts him to his feet. Johnson rushes Jeffries across the ring, where he floors Jeff with a paralyzing right to the head. Rickard steps between the two fighters, and Sam Berger, in dark vest and hat, rushes in and stops the fight to save Jeffries.
Johnson had once again made easy work of his opponent. He was declared the winner as the crowd of 22,000, mostly whites, started to disperse. The spectacle of a white man versus a black man had just backfired. The win was seen as proof of the invalidity of white supremacy. Johnson stood in opposition to everything that a black man should be. He beat up whites, he married white women, and he did all this in the open for the world to see. The news of Johnson's victory caused commotion and civil unrest. Race riots broke out all over the country, leaving many dead and even more injured. The fight film was censored as it ignited a wave of racial violence against black people who were celebrating the win. Unable to get Johnson in the ring, the American government perverted the Mann Act and used it to arrest Jack Johnson.
10 a.m. this morning, you drove Miss Eleanor Backman across the Illinois-Wisconsin state line. Having done so, you proceeded to have relations with her. Under the Mann Act, that makes you liable. Therefore, I'm placing you under arrest.
Jack Johnson was so controversial that after he lost the title in 1915, a black man would not be allowed to fight for the championship for 22 years. In 1937, Joe Louis would fight and win the heavyweight championship of the world. To get his title shot, his handlers carefully crafted his public image to essentially be the opposite of Jack Johnson. He could not be seen in public with white women. He could not celebrate victories over white opponents. And he had a humble and soft-spoken demeanor. This made him palatable to white audiences. At the brink of the Second World War, champion Joe Louis would face off against German fighter and Hitler poster boy Max Schmeling. This would represent the first time that the American public would root for a black man to win against a white. This was labeled the fight of the century.
June 22nd, 1938. Joe Louis defends his World Heavyweight Championship against former title holder Max Schmeling. Ripping punches by the Brown Bomber send Schmeling down again.
Louis would beat Schmeling, and much like Johnson's win, this fight would disprove the racist theories being propagated by the Nazis. Joe Louis is the man responsible for breaking the color line. He opened the door for all black people. After he retired, there would be numerous black heavyweights. The next black champion to capture the public's imagination would be Muhammad Ali, who took inspiration from Johnson and related to his legal struggles with the government. Muhammad Ali came along during the 1960s, a time of great change. The civil rights movement was in full effect, and the environment was perfect for an outspoken young man to take over the world. Unlike Johnson, who didn't see himself as representing the people, and Louis, who was not allowed to be controversial, Muhammad Ali was very vocal about racism and issues in America. Regardless of their differences, these men helped to elevate blacks in America, providing a symbol of strength and hope for their people. In 2016, Jack Johnson was pardoned for his crimes and is now regarded as a legend and pioneer of the sport. A while champion, Johnson also drew the color line, saying that the world did not want to see two black men fight. Johnson lived his life on his own terms. He insisted on being free, a lifestyle that would help to elevate blacks, but would also be his downfall. I lived in Africa for almost 10 years of my life and had studied black history at school. This gave me the illusion that I was educated on the subject. But after researching this topic in depth, I was shocked at what I discovered and just how intertwined racism is with our culture, permeating almost every aspect. Although it's no longer socially acceptable, it's an issue that will continue rearing its ugly head, not only in larger issues like police brutality, but in people's everyday life. Looking back, I can now understand Wilder's viewpoint. For individuals who have never experienced racism, both on a personal and systemic level, race might not be relevant. But for Wilder, a black man living in America who makes his living as a professional prize fighter, it's at the forefront of his life. Being the heavyweight champion is a role that carries great importance. And a black man wearing the crown has connotations that come with it, mainly the one of being a violent black man. Representation of African Americans in the media has always been lacking, being confined to stereotypes. Therefore, in a society that oppresses and discriminates against black people,
in a white car.
Any two will do.
and has the largest population of incarcerated blacks, it's important to have a champion to inspire the people. Men like Jack Johnson, Joe Louis, and Muhammad Ali are largely responsible for breaking racist stereotypes and reshaping what it means to be black. They inspired oppressed people around the world and are living proof that they too could rise and achieve great things. This is the real fight of the century, the fight against racism.